The bankruptcy of FTX and the collapse of some crypto assets in markets are showing us yet again how risk builds slowly and it happens very fast. The collapse of this index is absolutely logical. What we're seeing is that it was a business model predicated on something that was very risky, which was that the people would continue to buy these assets massively and that the liquidity would generate itself fundamentally from buy and hold positions, which ultimately don't happen because the liquidity dries up very, very fast, and the management of the index was counting on a level of liquidity that is not provided by these assets themselves, but by the US dollar. The problem of crypto assets and these indices and the way that they were built is that they were built with the idea that monetary expansion was going to go on forever. And they, instead of being an alternative to monetary expansion, instead of being a counterposition to the aggressive monetary expansion of central banks in the fiat world, what they became was a leveraged bet on that expansion. In essence, many of these crypto assets were becoming as aggressively correlated to monetary expansion as, for example, non-profitable tech or the riskiest high-yield bonds, etc. i.e., what all this means is that instead of being an alternative that creates its own liquidity and that generates a cushion and a safe situation in an environment of rising inflation and increasing monetary expansion and low rates, what these assets became were leverage bets on monetary expansion. Ultimately, what we have to understand is that the problem that is happening in different areas in the crypto world is not different from what is happening with state affiliated or fiat currencies. Government currencies are collapsing all over the world, and we've seen so far this year currencies of governments that have fallen 45, 55, 30% against the US dollar. Obviously, it is true that those are currencies that are falling because of the more aggressive monetary policy than that of the US Federal Reserve. Absolutely. But in currencies, like in any assets, liquidity is essential, and we take for granted liquidity, forgetting that when it dries up very fast. So ultimately, what is going on in many state currencies, it's happening as well with cryptocurrencies, but it's happening with cryptocurrencies faster or more aggressively because they were more leverage bets to that monetary expansion. The same way that the non-profitable tech stocks fall faster than those that are sort of more secure, but they still fall as well because of the monetary change in policy. And this is what we need to understand at the end, is that when liquidity dries up, the risk that has been building slowly happens very fast, and that the regulation or measures to try to curb those problems are always based on a fallacy, which is that regulation or government intervention are going to control something that they have absolutely no control of, which is the level of liquidity. The same way that the Argentine government or the Turkish government cannot stop their currency from depreciating against the US dollar, cryptocurrencies cannot change that, because all of them are leverage negative bets against the US dollar. And the US dollar in a fire is the house with the largest number of windows and doors, which means it is the provider of liquidity of the world.